Tennessee Valley of Alabama, home of the Marshall Space Flight Center. We like to call ourselves the birthplace of America's space program. And Dr. Jemison, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention that to us, you're a hero and a role model, having come from the Tennessee Valley, which is Decatur, where your birthplace, which is in the Tennessee Valley. And we also named a high school after you, Jemison High School, just a few years ago. So that gives you an idea of how highly we think of you and everything you've done in your personal life and in your professional career. I'd be remiss, though, if I didn't add that I'm a Trekkie, and knocking the ball out of the ballpark was when I found out you also were on a roll of Star Trek, Second Chances. So that's really cool, okay? With that as a little bit of a backdrop, here's a question for you, if you don't mind. In your testimony, you highlight the demand for skilled technical workers, STEM jobs that do not require a four-year degree. You also mention that women and underrepresented minorities are frequently unaware and left out of pathways to these careers. What can be done to improve the awareness and participation in these programs, and is there a role for industry to play?
Thank you very much for the question, and I do. My father worked on Redstone Arsenal as a roofer before I was born, so he was part of it too. Thank you for the question about skilled technicians and skilled labor, which actually do represent the majority of the STEM workforce. And in addition to that, they are very high-paying jobs, and women very frequently do not know about them. And we also have a workforce shortage in those areas. What can we do? We can, first of all, make people aware of them by actually having those jobs represented in television programs. When we talk about this, right now, we always talk about four-year degrees. I was busily writing notes about that. We talk about four-year degrees. We talk about academia. But the workforce that actually built the shuttle were not four-year degree engineers. They were skilled technicians. So we need to make sure that those jobs are represented. Then we have to make sure, I believe, that community colleges have the ability to do vocational work and are not seen as sort of a remedial place for what was not done in high school so that people can get into four-year colleges. Actually, community colleges do incredible work with training technicians. Vocational education in high school could be always also a pathway for people seeing and understanding what are some of the jobs that are available to them. And I just want to go back to something that is really clear. During World War II, women fulfilled many of the jobs that were considered masculine jobs, from, that iconic image of Rosie the Riveter. They also were the ones who transported airplanes around. We need to understand that women can do not only the biotechnician jobs, but they can also do the jobs that's in mechanical welding and building aircraft. Those things are important. So thank you for that question, but we need to get that out front and keep it in our eyesight.
I've got some facts I want to give. I don't know if we're going to have time for a question or not, but this is rather troubling to me, and I just did this research while I was sitting here. One was a comment by Don Lemon that PolitiFact then analyzed, and it was out-of-wedlock births. And then looking at STEMs and degrees and which races are going into STEM, and it seems that there's an unusual correlation. Let me run through it. Asian Americans, they are number one with the lowest number of out-of-wedlock births, and this is according to the National Center for Education Statistics, at 17% out-of-wedlock birth. They're also number one in terms of number of STEM degrees at 33% of the degrees that are given out to Asian Americans. Caucasian Americans were number two in out-of-wedlock births at 29%, and then number two in STEM degrees at 18%. Hispanic Americans were number three in out-of-wedlock births at 53%, and number three in the STEM degrees at 15%. Native Americans were number four out-of-wedlock births at 66%, and number four in STEM degrees at 14%. And then African Americans were number five at 73% out-of-wedlock births, and that's what caused PolitiFact to look into Don Lemon's statements, because that's what he said. And number 5, in STEM degrees. I hope that we can somehow or another as a body, Madam Chair, also look into this societal issue and see what can be done given this rather startling correlation between out-of-wedlock births and then people who then go thereafter into STEM degrees.